the slides. Please do not try to change the slides. I am recording the session. I'll upload that session, keep it recorded available for anyone who wants, and we will proceed onward. So this is the slide. Do you agree with this or you don't agree with this?
Last one is
Agreed, sir.
Agree? Agree. Everybody agrees?
Last
The
one.
last one is most appropriate.
Most wonderful news when the teacher is absent. And do you know what the teachers feel? The most awful moment when the students are absent. We are missing you all. We are hoping that you can come back soon and we can start more interpersonal interactions. This is okay. Online is okay, but it is not the same flavor as we get it when we have in person to person. Yeah, thank you, Jyoti, for switching off the mic. Yes. So let's move on to some interesting topic. In next two classes, today and tomorrow's, we are going to talk about one very interesting disease condition. Jyoti, please mute your mic. Jyoti, please keep your mic mute. So we are going to talk about one very interesting condition, anthrax. It's got huge impact on our lives. It has huge impact on our understanding of microbiology and diseases, and a huge impact on development of science and medical science especially. So we'll look at it in that particular fashion. So anthrax. Anyone knows what does the word anthrax stand for? What do you see in this particular picture? The mother sheep is telling something to the lamb, and what it is telling to the lamb is to some extent connected with what we are going to talk about in the next few classes, because anthrax is a condition which is very heavily interlinked with the life of the sheep and our handling of the sheep and sheep products. What is happening over here? This is called shearing a lamb or shearing a sheep, where the hair of the sheep are trimmed, taken out, and that's converted into wool. And we all enjoy woolen clothes, woolen garments to protect us from winter. But imagine this is taken off from the sheep when the sheep is going into summer, so that sheep doesn't have that excess hair on it and it can withstand the summer. And by the time winter comes in, the sheep again grow this hair back. The disease which we are going to talk has got a lot of interaction with sheep handling, and it is also known as wool sorters disease. Wool sorters disease, because this was associated as a professional hazard for the people who is involved in sheep handling and particularly in wool business. So we're talking about anthrax, a disease caused by Bacillus anthracis. As the name suggests, Bacillus means it's a bacillus in shape, belongs to the Bacillus group, and anthracis is the name which comes from the appearance of the lesion which is caused by this particular bacteria. The bacteria is not black in color, but the lesion which it causes on the skin looks black in color. Therefore, it is considered as something like coal in Greek, and therefore the name came anthracitis for black coal, and from there came the word Bacillus anthracis. It's one of the oldest known zoonotic disease because sheep were the first animal which we domesticated, and we use them for milk, for meat, as well as for their skin, for protecting us from the environment. And even in Bible, this is mentioned. In ancient poets like Homer and Virgil, it has been mentioned in their poems. And Hippocrates also describes this disease in great detail. So it's a very, very well-known disease to our ancestors. Unfortunately, these days our knowledge about anthrax is going down because we don't see so many cases. But there is always something to learn from history. The success in controlling anthrax disease in human beings is a success story of our knowledge about medicine, about knowledge about microbiology, about knowledge about handling animals and animal products, as well as something which can come back to us as a horror, as bioterrorist weapon. This is a picture from a poem by Virgil. And what do you see in this particular picture? What is peculiar which you notice in this picture which is present, or something which is not there? Anyone? What do you see? Any guess? Anyone would like to comment? What do you see in this particular picture? No comment? I think you people are not interested in the class then. There is no point in my one-way talking.
Wildlife, sir. Wildlife.
Wildlife. What all do you see here in wildlife? Yes. What do you see?
There is harmony between plant animals and humans.
Okay, which animals do you see?
Goats.
Yeah.
Horse.
Horse.
Yes.
So there is a dog also.
Dog.
There is a dog as well. Yes. What else? So do you see domestic animals or wild animals?
Domestic.
Domestic.
Domestic animals. So it's a picture of domestic animals, and most of the animals are herbivorous animals. You don't see any tiger, you don't see any lion, you don't see any jackal or any carnivorous animal over there, except perhaps dog. But dog also in this particular condition remains more or less an accompaniment of the shepherds. So this is from the poems by Virgil, where he has been describing the domestic animals and the life of a shepherd. And in that he also describes anthrax, how it affected the shepherds and the society. Who is this gentleman?
Robert Koch.
Robert Koch. He is credited with discovery of large number of organisms and also postulating Koch's postulate of disease, and those Koch's postulate actually originated from his study on anthrax. So he's also known for anthrax, for tuberculosis, and for many other diseases. His huge contribution. Till about 100 years ago, there were huge amount of infections due to anthrax all over the world, all continents, most of the countries, till Robert Koch and Louis Pasteur intervened, understood how the disease progresses, what is the cause of the disease, and created a vaccine for animals, and created the methods of destroying the organisms. And after that, the incidence of anthrax has suddenly dropped almost all over the world. But it has not disappeared. The bacteria still remains, and bacteria can still come back to us and can cause disease. It does cause sporadic diseases in developing world and even few cases in America as well, even the developed world. So we still need to be aware, careful, and to be able to recognize a case of anthrax if we see in our life. If you notice, all the animals over here are herbivores, except for dogs and cats and sometimes lions, this disease can occur. But otherwise, it is primarily a disease of the herbivorous animals. That means it must be entering into the body of the animals some way through their habit of eating the grass or eating the vegetable matter. From there, it might be incidentally sometimes going into carnivorous animals as well, but that's not common. That's very uncommon. This has also been used as a weapon of bioterrorism or biowarfare, and almost all countries, Russia, America, UK, have been involved, including Japan, have been involved in preparing and stockpiling anthrax bacteria to be used as a bioterror weapon or weapon for biological warfare. Some of them have used it, some of them have stockpiled it. So, there may be a day when one of these countries or some other country which also can manufacture these weapons now may use this as a weapon, and we might see cases of anthrax in very large numbers. So let's study about what this organism is like. It's a gram-positive bacillus, relatively big in size, about 1 to 1.2 micron by 3 to 9 micron in length. So quite long. It's non-motile and it's got a capsule around it. This capsule is very important because the capsule protects the organism from phagocytosis and from getting killed in our body easily by our innate immune system. This gram-positive bacillus has a huge capacity of forming endospores. Now, endospores are the mechanism of survival under adverse conditions. Endospores is not a method of multiplication or replication. The number of organisms remains same. It does not multiply when the bacteria gets converted into an endospore. One endospore formed from one bacteria. But that endospore can withstand drying, harsh temperatures, to some extent ultraviolet light, and can survive without nutrients for many years. And the spores of anthrax have been found that they can survive for more than 70 years in the soil. So any soil that is contaminated with the spores of this bacteria can be a potential way of transmission of disease because the endospores can survive there. They were actually doing an experiment by putting endospores in the soil and every year trying to take out some soil from there to see whether spores are still there or not. They did it for 70 years, and at 70 years they got tired. They said, oh, enough. If it can survive 70 years, maybe it can survive 100 years, maybe 1,000 years also. We don't have to do this experiment anymore. So they stopped that experiment. But endospores are found even in the ice which is frozen in Arctic permafrost. So they can survive very severe environmental conditions. These are aerobic bacteria, so they can grow in presence of oxygen and they grow very well, but they can grow also in absence of oxygen. So they can grow in both conditions. They have got very limited requirement of nutrition, so they can grow on ordinary medium like nutrient agar, even on blood agar or chocolate agar. Any enriched medium also is good enough, but they don't cause any hemolysis, so they form non-hemolytic colonies on blood agar. Since these are present in the environment, many times these bacteria can get into the culture plates and can be misunderstood as contaminants because these are gram-positive bacilli, look like any other gram-positive bacilli present in the environment. These are very difficult to destroy. They require boiling for more than 30 minutes, these spores particularly. They can be destroyed by formaldehyde, or the best way of getting rid of these spores is by burning them. So anything less than that, you're not very sure whether the bacteria can be, whether the spore can be killed or not killed. Ideally is autoclaving or incineration. Bleach or chlorine is not very effective. Formaldehyde is effective to some degree. So this is how these gram-positive bacilli look. You can see how they are stout and long, and if it appears as if they are branching, they are not actually branching, but another bacteria is there. It is cut from here and cut from here. So these are all individual bacilli. Since they are non-motile, when they divide, they continue to stay next to each other, and therefore it appears like they are branching bacteria, but they are not branching. They are non-motile, capsulated gram-positive bacteria, and these are all pus cells. Amongst them, these bacteria can survive. If you culture them on blood agar, they would look like this: no hemolysis, dry, grayish, whitish colonies. And if you take a gram stain, you can see the gram-positive bacilli, and the empty areas which are seen in between are the places where the bacteria is forming the spores, endospores. When you come back over here in one of the practicals, we'll give you a slide to stain for the endospore formation. So these are sporulating or spore forming bacteria. Next, we have a look as what else they are doing. They are more than 89 strains have been isolated, have been seen so far. More than 89 strains. Various strains coming from different areas. Some of them have been used for bioterrorist attack. Some have been used to create biological weapons. You don't have to remember these names. The aim is to show that people have handled these as in the laboratories and modified them genetically also to make them more virulent, or sometimes to make them less virulent, to make vaccines out of them. What disease does it cause? It can cause disease of three types primarily, depending upon the way in which the organism enters our body. If you remember the first lecture which I had taken when we discussed about the organisms which primarily enter through the skin and cause local infections, organisms which can enter through the skin but can cause infection all over the body, organism which can enter through other routes by inhalation or ingestion but can manifest as skin diseases. Over here, this is an organism which, depending upon the route of entry, primarily affects that particular system, and the disease is primarily limited to that particular system only. It is unlikely that an Bacillus anthracis which is inhaled will cause gastrointestinal symptoms. Not very common. Similarly, something which has been inhaled will not cause cutaneous manifestation. But sometimes they can get into the bloodstream and they can spread all over the body, and so inhaled organism can lead to systemic manifestation also. Ingested organism can also manifest systemically. But cutaneous manifestation is primarily when the organism is acquired by inoculation in the skin. But once inoculated into the skin, from there it can travel to any other part of the body also and can cause systemic manifestation. So we look at all these three manifestations in today's and the next tomorrow's class. Now, who all are likely to get infected? It doesn't occur very commonly. Maybe in your life you may see just few cases of anthrax. If you're working in the urban area, you may never see a case of anthrax unless it is used as a bioterror weapon. But if you're living in the rural or semi-rural area, or if your patients belong to the animal husbandry area, then you are likely to see patients, because those who are working with the animals or those who are working with the products of the animals like the wool, the meat, the skin, the horns, the hooves, they are all those who are involved in slaughter. They are the one who are likely to be exposed to the spores of this particular bacteria. Now, where do the spores get into? What do the sheep do? The idyllic situation. Just visualize in front of you huge pasture, nice green grass all over. That's what we are having in Nepal right now. A flock of sheep grazing over there, a shepherd sitting over there, maybe playing on his flute or just singing, some dogs barking, roaming around here and there. What happens after some time? The sheep are grazing, the sheep are defecating, and then the sheep are rolling in the grass. The Bacillus anthracis spores are present in the grass, present in the soil. So when the animal is rolling on the grass, many of those spores are getting into the wool of the animal. And when someone handles that wool, it creates aerosol, and the spores can be inhaled by that person, and it can cause inhalation anthrax. The spores might be there in the grass, and the animal might eat the spores along with the grass and along with some other thorny vegetable matters also. Maybe some types of vegetables which have got thorns, some type of grass, some type of leaves, some type of trees which have got grass. So that sharp object can injure the mucosa of the intestine and the stomach, and the ingested spores may enter from there into the bloodstream and can cause infection. So most important risk factor is people working with the animals or animal products. So this is an important history which you must take whenever you see a patient. What do these organisms have? We have seen that they can grow aerobically, they can grow anaerobically, and then they form dry, wrinkled, whitish, grayish colonies on nutrient agar or on blood agar. If we do the biochemical and other reactions of the organism, we find they are biochemically not very active. They can utilize simple things in the environment and survive. But what they have is to protect themselves from the injuries. And unfortunately, those things which protect the organism from environment are the ones which cause injury or disease to us. The organism which you have seen have got a glutamic acid capsule. If you recall your studies of general microbiology, we talked about capsule, the purpose of the capsule, the composition of the capsule, and what does capsule do is it gives protection to the organism from phagocytosis. So if the bacteria enters into our body, a vegetative form of the bacteria enters into our body, then its capsule protects it from getting phagocytosed, so it can survive, it can multiply, and it can produce many other things in our body which are called as the virulent factors. Also, the spore may enter into our body, may get inoculated into the skin, or may get inhaled, or may get ingested, and the spore will be picked up by the macrophages, and it can be carried from one place to another. With the macrophage, it can go into the lymphatic system and from there into the lymph node. The spore is very tough. Macrophage is not able to destroy the spore. So inside the macrophage, the spore gradually gets whatever it requires to convert into a vegetative form of the bacillus. So inside the macrophage, the spore germinates and forms a bacillus. That bacillus can survive in the presence of oxygen, in absence of oxygen, in presence or absence of carbon dioxide, and it can take all the nutrients from the cell and multiply, become larger in number. During its metabolism activity of eating, metabolizing, and producing, it produces certain factors which we call as the virulence factors. It produces a large number of products, large number of chemicals, large number of byproducts. Like we produce urea, creatinine we produce. Similarly, bacteria also produces large number of chemicals. But we study only those which from our point of view are important in understanding the disease process. So we are studying only three factors: edema factor, lethal factor, and protective antigen. These are the three things which are produced by the bacteria, and these are called exotoxins, and they are liberated from the bacterial cell and go into the surrounding. There is a surrounding. The surrounding is the cytoplasm of the macrophage itself, and that can cause destruction of the cytoplasm, and the bacteria may be liberated out in the bloodstream or in the lymphatic. Once the bacteria are liberated over there, they again start multiplying. They become metabolically more active. And once they become more active, they produce more amount of edema factor, lethal factor, and protective antigens. But all these three things, if they are separate, independent, will not cause any problem to our body. Just simple edema factor will not do anything. Lethal factor will not do anything. Protective antigen will not cause any disease. What is required is an interaction between protective antigen and edema factor, an interaction between protective antigen and lethal factor. The protective antigen by itself does not cause any disease, but it acts like an uncoating substance, or like a key, or like an activating substance which activates the edema factor and lethal factor. So the virulence occurs only when edema factor combines with protective antigen, or lethal factor combines with protective antigen. So EF, edema factor, plus PA, protective antigen, leads to damage. Lethal factor plus protective antigen leads to damage. The protective antigen acts as a receptor attaching mechanism. So protective antigen has joined the edema factor. Now it brings the edema factor to the cell, to the macrophages, to the polymorphs, to various other cells in our body. And the protective antigen, one component of protective antigen, gets lodged onto the receptor on that particular cell. The cell already has got the slots where it will get attached. Once it gets attached, it allows the edema factor or the lethal factor, whichever it is attached with, to enter inside the cell. And once edema factor and lethal factor enter the cell, they become very active and they destroy the cell by various mechanisms acting at NAD, NADPH, and so many other biochemical steps. You need not go into those details as to what steps occur, but you need to just understand that an activated edema factor or activated lethal factor activated by the protective antigen can enter into the cell and can disrupt the metabolic activity of the cell and can destroy the cell. So every molecule of edema factor or lethal factor entering into a cell will destroy that cell. So just depending on the number of these molecules circulating in the body, the extent of the disease will be determined. It may be severe or it may not be severe. And these virulence factors are extracellular components. That means they are produced by a multiplying living bacteria and liberated in large amount. One bacillus releases millions and millions of molecules of edema factor, lethal factor, and protective antigen. So huge amount of these toxins are liberated and they are not easily destroyed by our innate immune system. Even our acquired immune system is not very good at destroying them because these are not very highly antigenic. Protective antigen is antigenic, but lethal factor and edema factor are not very antigenic. So many antibodies are not created against it, and therefore these toxins, if they keep on circulating in the body, they'll keep on destroying the cells and they will keep on causing the disease. So have you understood the virulence factors of anthrax? This is very important to understand that single factor by itself is not of use. Combination with protective antigen is necessary for its becoming harmful to our cells. And the each one single molecule of edema factor or lethal factor can destroy one cell. It is so potent a toxin. So is it clear to you up till now? Any doubts about virulence factors and virulence activity of Bacillus anthracis? If there is any doubt, we can clarify that doubt right now. No doubts? Can we go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So,
good. Yes.
so can you please explain that about the edema factor and lethal factor when they enter into the cell? What the thing again?
Edema factor and lethal factor get attached to the protective antigen. All three are produced by the bacteria itself, but they are produced independently, separate things. So protective antigen goes and joins the edema factor. One molecule of protective antigen goes and joins the one molecule of lethal factor. And now, because of this protective antigen, it gets entry into the host cell. Maybe macrophage, maybe polymorphs, maybe epithelial cells, maybe any other cells in the body. And once it enters inside the body, the edema factor and lethal factor show their effect on the cell metabolism, destroy the cell metabolism, and destroy the cell. Is that clear now, Shruti?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, good. Anyone else having any doubt about these virulence factors? None? So we go ahead. Now what happens? Once this edema factor or lethal factor gets inside the cell, it destroys the cell. It bursts the cell. It stops the cell's biochemical mechanism. So cell machinery comes to a standstill. It's something like strike. It's something like a lockdown, close, everything closed, nothing works. And if the close down, lockdown continues for long period, the society dies. Same thing happens inside the cell. The toxins shut down all the biochemical mechanisms in the body, and that leads to the death of the cell. The specific actions which some of the cells have, some of the toxins have, is that the edema factor specifically acts on neutrophils. So the neutrophils which are going to try and attack the bacteria are killed, and therefore the bacteria can survive much longer in our body. The endothelial cells of the blood vessels, the endothelial cells or the epithelial cells lining our mucosa, gastric mucosa, intestinal mucosa, the respiratory mucosa, alveoli, all those epithelial cells, etc., also get damaged. And particularly when the damage occurs onto the vascular endothelial cells, the endothelial cells of the blood vessels which are close to each other get separated from each other. So the gap occurs between the two cells, and through the gap, the plasma and the other fluids can get out. So intravascular components become extravascular. The volume of the blood decreases because most of the plasma has gone out, and therefore the person suffers from hypovolemic shock. When hypovolemic shock occurs, the blood supply to various parts of the body are decreased. And if the blood supply to that part of the body where the bacteria are there is decreased, the bacteria enjoys, because now there is much less problem for bacteria to undertake. Bacteria can proliferate. There are nobody to stop the bacteria, because blood supply brings nutrients to our body cells. It also brings all the macrophages and other things, and all those innate and acquired immune system is thrown into disarray. So the bacteria can multiply. The bacteria, this is the way bacteria damages our systems for its own survival and for its own multiplication. So once the patient goes into hypovolemic shock, more bacteria are generated, more bacteria are produced, more bacteria produce more toxins keep on circulating in our body, and in turn they keep on causing the same damage. So even if the number of organisms is small, the toxins which are circulating will keep on causing the damage. Even if we kill the bacteria, unless all the toxins are neutralized, the damage will continue to happen. Have you understood the importance? The bacteria does not move from one place to another place to cause much destruction. It prefers to stay at one place and multiply, but it sends the toxin to cause the damage to various parts of our body. Now let's see what happens in cutaneous anthrax. In cutaneous anthrax, the entry of the organism occurs through the skin by inoculation. Animals carry the organisms in their skin. Sometimes animal may eat these organisms and may die because of these organisms as gastrointestinal anthrax, and then the dead animal will require to be handled. In many countries, these are handled. They are not picked up mechanically, but picked up by the people using bare hands, without any gloves, without any protective equipment. Many of these animals are carried on the back of the people from one place to another. Or the animal has died, they have skinned the animal, they have eaten the meat portion of it, and the skin and the hooves and the horns are used for creating various things which we enjoy in our life. The buttons on our shirts, many of them are created from the hooves and the horns. The antique material, the decorative materials which are created from the bones or from the hooves or from the horns of many animals. The skin of the animal is carried, may be used as a sitting for lining our couches, or the hair of the animal are harvested, and anyone and everyone who is using these things gets exposed to the spores. If these spores get introduced into the skin, because many of these handlings are associated using the sharp equipments, so sometimes an injury to the arm occurs, a abrasion occurs, or a cut occurs, and the organism's spores may enter through the skin. Once they enter through the skin, they are usually picked up by the macrophages and taken to the lymph node. But some of the spores may remain locally and may germinate over there to produce the bacilli. These bacilli will produce the toxins, and now the effect of the toxin will be first seen locally in causing what we call as cutaneous anthrax. So cutaneous anthrax occurs because of the inoculation of the organism, germination of the spores into vegetative forms, production of the toxins by these vegetative forms, and the local action of the toxins on the skin or adjoining tissue. And this may come as a boil like lesion or as an ulcer, and an ulcer having a central black area. That central black area is called Ishar. Spelling is Eschar. That Ishar is the central black area of the ulcer, and it is a characteristic feature of anthrax ulcer. If you see a patient with an ulcer on the skin with a central black area, 90% of the times your diagnosis should be anthrax, cutaneous anthrax. 10% will get confirmed by finding out that the ulcer is mostly painless. Imagine, most of the ulcers, even a small prick of needle in your finger, even a small sting by a mosquito, even a small scratch from your nails, or an abrasion on your knees when you play, leads to pain. The pain is what attracts our attention. But in case of anthrax, the ulcer is painless. So painless ulcer with a central black area in a person who gives history of handling animals or animal products, your diagnosis should be anthrax. If the patient is not treated, 20% of them can die because the bacteria can spread from that local place, or the toxin which is produced in huge amount locally can get into the lymphatics, can go into the bloodstream, and can spread to other parts of the body and can cause damage to other systems. Or the bacteria itself may gain entry into the lymphatics, may gain entry into the lymph node, may multiply over there, from there may enter into the bloodstream and can spread to various other parts, and in different parts it may start producing more toxins and more damage. So that's how 20% of the patients which are not treated will die. But if you treat the patient, 99% of the patients will survive. So treatment is simple, treatment is very effective, provided we start the treatment in time. Interestingly, despite there being bacteria on that ulcer, and even if you are dressing that ulcer, even if you touch that ulcer, person to person spread does not occur. So the ulcer may look very ugly, but person to person spread does not occur. But what can happen is the bacteria from there may get into the cloth, and in the cloth, because it does not get nutrients, it may get converted into spores. Now those spores are infectious because they can get entry into our body by inhalation or by ingestion or by inoculation, and therefore handling the body of the person or an animal which has died because of anthrax is extremely important. Its secretions, its blood coming out of it, the ulcers, all of that may have bacteria which after death may get converted into spores, and the spores may become pathogenic. If you bury the animal, if you bury the person, will that kill the spores? No. We have seen the spores can remain alive for more than 70 years in the soil also. Therefore, cremation is the most important way of disposing a dead body which is flooded with Bacillus anthracis. So here is the pathogenesis of Bacillus anthracis. It can get into our body by skin, causing cutaneous local manifestation, by spore getting inoculated, spore multiplying over there, or spore getting into the macrophage, macrophage carrying the spore, or the spore germinating inside the macrophage and being carried from there into different parts of the body and causing toxemia. It can come through the oral cavity as intestinal. Along with the injury through the intestinal tract, the spore may enter into the epithelial cells, may germinate over there, the bacillus may form over there, and again the same cycle gets repeated. Or the spores may get inhaled may survive in the alveoli for very long period, may get absorbed in the macrophages and again travel in the same way, and then we can have meningitis, lymphangitis due to hematogenous spread and can death, or we can have septicemia and toxemia leading to shock and multiple organ failure, or we can develop lymphatic blockage, pulmonary edema, more fluid in the lungs, inability to breathe properly, and can cause death. This is the diagram where it shows that toxemia, edema toxin, and the lethal toxin, how they act at the ATP level, at CAMP level, and how it acts at various level and inactivates the basic metabolic activity of the cell, leading to cell death. This is the virulence and this is the cutaneous anthrax which it leads to. If you take the pus or fluid from the patient who is having an anthrax, and if you stain it with gram stain, you will find these gram positive bacilli, long bacilli, along with large number of pus cells. You see the bacillus is very long. It cannot be eaten by one polymorphonuclear cell, and therefore phagocytosis is not very effective. Also, it has got a capsule around it, so it does not allow the phagocyte to eat it. And if here you can make out there is some capsule around this bacteria, and also if you see irregular staining, that shows that some of the bacilli are getting converted into spore formation. This is how they may appear. If you take a lymph node, because of the toxins, the tissue in the lymph node gets destroyed, and this is called as a necrosis in the mediastinal lymph node if the person has inhaled and the bacteria have gone into the lymph node. And this is how the ulcers on the skin appear. The blackish area of the ulcer, multiple ulcers, because the person must have got himself inoculated at various places and sometimes at various times. So the ulcers may be of different ages. If you see closely, then the effect of edema factor can be seen as redness, increased perfusion, increased permeation of the endothelial cells, and edema, extravasation of the fluid, and an ulcer formation. And interestingly, it's a painless ulcer. So the commonest exposure is cutaneous exposure on the hands, arms, neck. It can be incubation period can be as short as 3 days or can be as large as 12 days, depending upon how long the spores can survive in our body. Since it is a small number of organisms which will be inoculated and small amount of toxins will be produced, the constitutional symptoms are less, but local symptoms may occur more, and then it may stimulate the immune system, and then antibody formation against the protective antigen may start, and those antibodies may start restricting the spread of toxins and thereby controlling the disease. Most of these patients are inoculated again and again during their work. So over a period of time, they develop acquired immunity to anthrax, and they may have just a local small ulcer, and meanwhile the antibodies will kick in and they will stop further spread of the disease. But sometimes it can spread into lymphatics, can cause lymphadenopathy, and from there can get into various parts of the body and can cause septicemia as well. So painless ulcer, papule macule becomes itchy, may become a vesicle, may have discharge coming out of that. There will be an ulcer which will form a non-pitting edema, gelatinous edema around it, and a black center. So black center in a painless ulcer is the diagnosis of cutaneous anthrax, and this is the black center. Looks like a piece of coal, and this is the edema, and this is the fluid coming out of the edematous tissue. it is right now localized, restricted to that area because person perhaps has been getting a repeated exposure and has developed partial immunity to it. It may heal gradually, leaving the black portion in the center, and after some time, this black portion also will fall off, and there will not be any scar. That is interesting. It does not leave any scar. So you cannot diagnose the patient by looking at the scar that patient had anthrax earlier. And this is where the axillary lymph nodes are involved because of the infection coming from this arm and causing lymphadenitis. Now there is another condition of lymphadenitis, that is plague or any other infection also. So when do you suspect? You suspect a patient to have anthrax if there is history of working with animals, if he develops an ulcer which is painless with a black central area with a swelling. Unfortunately, there are no rapid laboratory tests by which you can diagnose the patient. If you have got high degree of suspicion, take the fluid from that place and send it for gram staining and culture. On simple gram staining, you will find gram positive bacilli, large number of them, along with pus cells. You can grow the bacteria from this fluid or from the blood also into common antibiotic containing or non-antibiotic containing media, simple nutrient agar or simple blood agar. If you are picking up the specimen from the soil, then you might have to require specialized selective medium which will allow only Bacillus anthracis to grow because there will be thousands of different types of contaminants present in the soil. Once the organism is isolated, we do the antibiotic sensitivity, though most of the organisms are highly sensitive to large number of antibiotics. Penicillin, ampicillin, tetracycline, ciprofloxacin, norfloxacin. You can use any available antibiotic and this bacteria will die very quickly. Since this is highly infectious bacteria, common laboratories are advised not to culture them, but only at the reference laboratories where they can employ special stains, where they can do polymerase chain reaction. Now polymerase chain reaction can be done at other places also and can be stained. Now this is a condition where the nasal swabs are not diagnostic because though the spores may enter through the nasal cavity, they do not remain over there. They have to go back, go down into the alveoli. So spores will not be detected from the nasal swabs. Nasal swab is not the ideal specimen. From cutaneous anthrax, the ideal specimen is discharged from the skin. If it is a pulmonary anthrax, maybe sputum. If it is another type of anthrax, then other specimens can be taken. We need to hospitalize the patient and we need to treat the patient very carefully because patient can go into shock and therefore we need to give ICU support. Steroids are not very useful, so should not be given, but the emphasis must be on intravenous antibiotic use. So we have so far seen the morphology of anthrax bacillus, where it is present in the nature, how it travels from nature into human body by inoculation or by inhalation or by ingestion, how it can affect the animals. The sheep also is affected in the same way as human beings are. So sheep also can develop cutaneous anthrax, inhalation anthrax or gastrointestinal anthrax. And other herbivorous animals also can develop similar type of disease. We have seen what is the clinical presentation. We have understood the virulence factors of this bacteria and we have also seen that it can be very easily effectively treated by common antibiotics. We'll stop here today and then tomorrow we'll take the remaining two parts, that is inhalation and ingestion anthrax. If you have understood the virulence factors, if you understood the bacteriology of this bacteria, it will be easy for you to understand the remaining portion also. So any doubts up till now? Anyone having any doubt? No doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts? I'm asking you for any doubts because I'm going to take attendance now. Okay, so you all have been marked present. You don't have to send your roll numbers or anything. You have been marked present and we'll take the next class tomorrow. If you got any doubts or anything, please note them down and you can bring them for tomorrow's class. Can we stop now? Or does anyone want to ask anything? No questions? Okay, if you have questions, note them down. You can send them to me or we can discuss in tomorrow's class. And meanwhile, try and attempt the assignments which you have already posted. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank
Enjoy,
you,
have
sir.
fun, and see you
Thank you, sir.
tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.